much for joining us. We are still at the PAAB Conference at Rainbow Towers, and it's going on swimmingly, and I'm enjoying the panels, and we've got somebody who was very interesting, and when I heard them speak earlier on in the morning, they had very interesting thoughts, very interesting ideas, and I thought, you know what, the public deserves to hear a lot more of their ideas, and this is Ambassador Gertrude Takawira. Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador, and you look so dapper, so beautiful. I love the colors. Everything is just...
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're a governance professional.
Yes.
Yeah, would you like to just spend a little bit of time just telling us about your history and how you became a governance professional?
Okay. Having trained with the Institute from the late 90s, I graduated early 2000, and I became a member first with the Institute in the UK, and then later on...
This is when it was CIS.
It was CIS.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty about our institute, that you can be a member in Zimbabwe. You can then transfer your membership to the UK, to the Australian, to the Canadian office. We have 9 divisions across the globe. So you can be actually a member of any of the institutes across the 9 divisions. So that's the beauty about it. So I did some time with the UK Institute, and also, of course, the Zimbabwean Institute.
Okay, brilliant. And maybe you can just give us a synopsis of what you discussed with your panel for the public generally, and then we can then get into the weeds of some of the things that you said. Okay,
so our focus was on governance and leadership, ethical leadership, vis-a-vis the financial integrity, the strengthening of financial integrity through governance and ethical leadership. So at the top of any governance discourse, particularly corporate governance, you have the board. That's your leadership. So when you talk about leadership in a corporate governance setup, your primary target is your board members. So basically what we were trying to do in the discussions this morning was to highlight the role of the board, the capacity of the board to provide an insight, an oversight on organizations in terms of strengthening the financial integrity. So we were looking at it from different perspectives. We looked at it from a governance perspective. We also looked at it from an ethical perspective. We also looked at it from the ESG, which, as you know, talks about the climate change, talks about the social issues, the environment, the social issues, and the governance.
Could you give us an example of a company that actually you think is the epitome, or the standard, the gold standard of governance, and in terms of board representation, how we should really be thinking around this? Could you give us an international example, and could you give us a local example?
Well, that would be very difficult to say, but offhand, I would just, in Zimbabwe, perhaps think of Econet, based on the fact that they are on the stock exchange, and the consistency in terms of their being on the stock exchange indicates to you that there's something good that is happening on the governance perspective, in terms of the structures, in terms of the capacity, in terms of the independence, in terms of the compliance with the regulator. So that's your first indicator. In terms of the ethics, perhaps your main indicator would be the issues of corruption. So when you find organizations being talked about in terms of money laundering, in terms of corruption, then that's your red flag. And I can't really think of the best organization, but perhaps what Old Mutual has done well in terms of also looking at the environment. Zimbabwean environment is not the easiest.
Turbulent.
It's very turbulent, and so we must not take that away from the institutions, the organizations themselves, the amount of fighting they have to be doing to maintain the integrity, to maintain the ethics.
And you picked up two large organizations. Econet, I think, is the largest company on the ZSE, and Old Mutual is one of the largest companies in Zimbabwe. But thinking about governance now for smaller companies, especially for startups, is it really necessary, or what should be the guiding ethical position for people who are starting out and don't have the sort of balance sheet that Econet and Old Mutual has to set up these governance structures?
Right. That's very important what you have said, particularly because the majority of businesses in Zimbabwe are small scale, and therefore, indeed, that's a very pertinent question. The small scale organizations, they are actually the ones that need good governance more, because when a company starts a business, your expectation is that they are going to grow. I don't think anyone goes into business and they say, no, as for me, I just want it. Everyone has an expectation that one day I will be this large organization. One day I will go into the international markets, the regional markets, and all that sort of thing. There's always that understanding of scaling, institutions. And so the small scale, yes, they might not have the 100% or the full capacity as Old Mutual would have, but definitely there are certain minimal standards that are expected. For example, having board members, an independent sort of set of board members. Why would an SME require that? You want someone to come in and tell you that, I think, if you do it like this, you will do better.
But you can't afford them.
Yeah. Remember, the minimum is 2 board members, according to our Companies Act. So you don't need a whole set of board members.
Okay.
But the key is, how do you select those 2?
All right.
You get the point. So if you are going to say it's me and my wife, of course you're not going to have an independent viewpoint.
I suppose it could be your former teacher.
It could be, professionals. We have these professionals.
But they're expensive.
Well, not everyone. I mean, we personally, I'm on a number of boards that I serve on pro bono. Not necessarily everyone is looking for the funds, but it's in fact, there's a lot of goodwill out there.
Oh, that's
and
good
not
to hear.
everyone is looking for that. Yes, you also have other people that want that financial aspect, which is not bad, but it's not everyone. So yes, SMEs can actually have people that can help them just on a goodwill, particularly when they are starting. This is where they really need that assistance, that independent oversight, that diversity, that person who says, okay, because you, as your business, you are good at, painting, maybe it's a painting, or, but I don't know much about, what you do, but I can ask something else to sort of counter what you are doing. I will ask very, naive questions so that it keeps you also
Probs.
Yes.
It's very problem. Okay. And then now let's translate that to public sector, because we see a lot of parastatals. Whenever there's a new minister, we always know that there's a new board. And really, from a governance perspective, do you think that that's the right way in which we should run our parastatals? And what are the contradictions and paradoxes with that every minister always comes with a new board?
Okay, there are two aspects here. There is the law. The parastatals are governed by, a legal framework, which actually does allow the minister to do that. That's all. The second aspect is the ethical side, which I think is probably what I would want to talk about and say in the appointment of the board members for parastatals. The key there is to make sure that the board members are qualified. That's critical. But sometimes we have seen maybe not so qualified people on the board. And when I say qualified, I'm saying not in terms of books or in terms of, but in terms of independence, in terms of that diversity. You heard in the morning, we were talking about gender, for example, as a diversity. So you have a board with 100% male board members. Already the qualification, the capacity of that board becomes sort of compromised. You can also have board members who are not, or shall I say, who might not have the skills that are required for that particular parastatals. And sometimes because the minister is new, there's also that possibility that because of lack of experience in terms of the businesses of the states, the parastatal itself, there are mistakes.
So what do you make of the conflict between the drive for diversity and meritocracy? Because sometimes you'll find an all-male board simply because when they reviewed applications, the only people who were qualified or were interested, some were male. And then, so if you create an artificial requirement for diversity, what then tends to happen is you include people who check the diversity box, but aren't necessarily the best from a merit perspective. I mean, so how do you balance meritocracy and diversity?
I think that's very important. So when we're talking about diversity, when we are saying, for example, in terms of gender representation, we are also not expecting just to have females on the board. We're expecting to have skills from,
diverse backgrounds.
Yes, from diverse backgrounds. It might not qualify as a gender, but it can qualify in terms of age. That you have board members who are, as the discussion that we had. So the diversity is not in itself just restricted to, like, do we need 10 women and I'm one of those who are not for this, for just having board, for the sake of having women on the board. And I'm sure Zimbabwe has a lot of qualified women.
Yes, we do.
If we actually just perhaps cast our net wide enough, but perhaps it brings us to maybe one of the issues that affect our governance, the old boys network. So where are you looking for board members? So if I'm not on the golf course, if I'm not at Mereki for drinks, do I get
at our office?
You get the point. Yeah. So the old boys network, and it's actually a serious governance, misgovernance of looking for your particular candidates from a specific pool. So that's so the diversity is to say, okay, we have this. How can we ask professional organizations such as our institute, the Chartered Governance Institute, to do a selection for us? Something that is completely independent. But you and me, being human as we are, our tendency is that when I think of, okay, there's a board vacancy, I would think, oh, I know so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I just run to them. It's a human tendency, but that's exactly what we are saying, that in terms of governance, let's allow the professionals to also help us, so that at least you are not, you don't find yourself in that awkward.
Our time is running out, but another philosophical question around board composition. Already we talked about diversity of in terms of background, and that's good. So in terms of governance, and when you're constituting a board, what are your thoughts on whether or not we should have a board that is a team of rivals, and one where we are actually aligned in terms of maybe ideology, but where we really differ is just, background? What sort of board, and how should we really constitute our board?
Well, the purpose of the board is to have, yes, the independence, yes, the diversity, but yes, the competence as well. And perhaps the most important is that ability to work together, that ability to communicate, that ability to relate as board members. So we are not saying a boardroom should be, about fighting. We're expecting that as board members, your colleagues, and you are able to work together. So there is the extreme of having someone that you cannot even they don't understand the culture. I think perhaps, what we're talking about here is culture. What kind of a culture? As a board member, I have refused certain offers to go on certain boards, because I also evaluate what sort of a culture I'm likely to face, and am I willing to engage with that kind of a culture. So it works both ways, isn't it? The board member is not like it's a docile, that you just say come in, and they also will say whether or not they want to join. And yes, and someone that it's like having a good team of football. You don't know all those guys, the 11 of them, but because they've agreed to come together to work on something, they are galvanized around one cause, and they end up being a formidable team.
And then finally, let's talk about family businesses. Should they actually have a board? And if they were to have a board, should they have external members, or should they just have family members, uncles and aunts? How should they go about it? And should they literally have, quarterly board meetings where they meet and they go through the structure? And is there a benefit in that? Because, if you're a family business, all the decisions are made at dinner tables, and not necessarily in a formalized way where there's minute taking and things like that. But what would you advise small businesses to constitute?
Well, first of all, if it's in an incorporated company, that means if it's a company according to Companies Act of Zimbabwe, then yes, the law requires that the company has board members. So it is a law. How the family wants to conduct its business, you also have others that can be family owned, but being partnerships, being sole traders. So it depends what kind of entity it is. But if it's a company incorporated according to the law, then yes, it has to have the board. I was reading the I think it's Fortune 500 that released the richest people recently, I think a week or two ago, and I was looking at the list, and a lot of those people are family businesses. And why are they doing so well? it's because their governance systems are okay. So whether you are sitting as a sole trader and you're sitting around the table and you have those accountability mechanisms in place, your governance should be able to work for you.
Okay.
So yes, family owned. No one, all you're saying in governance is that you don't know it all. You need someone to look, to help you see the other way, to help you carry the load, and to help you to be objective. Remember, the business is there to serve people out there. So even if you are just a sole trader, the fact that your products end up on my table, my kitchen table, it means I already have a relationship with you, as I'm a stakeholder in your organization. So rather than say, no, I will deal with, because then there are things like standards, the Standards Association. Your products, are they registered? Are they, with the Standards Association, if it's food? And is it, in the case of, for example, if it's food and there's poisoning, that's a legal case, for example. How are you going to manage all that? So yes, the issue of accountability, the issue of independence, the issue of diversity, and the competence of the organization rests on the board.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for doing this. For me, it was extremely illuminating. I mean, the message that I got, and this is to everybody, is whether you're a family business, you're a sole trader, a partnership, it's very important, first by law, to have these governance systems around you, and to actually start reporting and to do the accounting standard, because it's actually good for you, because you don't know everything and you do need the accountability. What were your takeaways from this?
No, I completely agree. I think that sometimes governance is treated as a dirty word, by people who want to move quickly. But I think in the end, you're better off for it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. At all.
Fantastic.
No, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.